They didn't escort me out in handcuffs. They didn't shout. They just smiled like I was a spreadsheet they no longer needed. 10 years. 10 years of patching holes they didn't see, fixing fires they never smelled. And in the end, one quiet meeting, one templated folder, one final insult dressed as gratitude. I was the reason the invoices got sent, the reason the client dashboards didn't crash at midnight. The reason their flashy future of finance wasn't built on a graveyard of broken code. But none of that made it into the performance review, did it? What made it in was that I didn't align with their culture, that I wasn't evolving with the brand. Translation: I didn't clap loud enough at Sierra's buzzword-filled pep talks. I didn't nod when she called our core infrastructure a relic. They fired me for being the only one who knew how the damn thing worked. And now I'm sitting at a cafe across the street, sipping cold coffee, watching the lights in their shiny 15th floor office flicker like a storm is coming. Because it is. But before we get into what happened next, where are you tuning in from today? And be honest, have you ever been punished for doing your job too well? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Someone out there might need to know they're not crazy or alone. They never really saw me. Not when I rerouted the transaction gateway at 2 a.m. to prevent a system-wide timeout. Not when I rebuilt the invoicing tool from scratch after an update wiped our saved templates. And definitely not when I stayed late 3 Fridays in a row just to manually process compliance flags that no one else even knew existed. That was my role. Unseen, unpraised, necessary. My name's Harper Linwood. I was the senior infrastructure engineer at Covalent, or as Sierra once called me, that backend person with the glasses. Yeah, that's me. I didn't decorate my desk with inspirational quotes or fake succulents. No branded water bottle, no Slack emojis, no small talk in the hallway. Just a dark terminal, a half-empty mug of burnt coffee, and a system that quietly stayed alive because I stayed alert. And somehow, I was okay with that. For a while. Dev, my only real friend at work, used to joke that I was the ghost in the shell. Everything runs because Harper haunts the pipes, he said once during a lunch break. I laughed, but I knew he wasn't wrong. I documented everything. Well, almost everything. Some things I kept to myself, not out of malice, just out of instinct. You learn after a while that the more people depend on your knowledge, the less they try to replace you. Or so I thought. Lately, though, the era at Covalent started to shift. The quiet hum of problem-solving was replaced by influencer pep talks and pastel rebrands. Suddenly, knowing the system inside out wasn't considered a strength, it was a risk. I heard it in whispers during meetings. I saw it in how Jonas, the new CEO, looked at me like I was an old file they couldn't quite delete. And then Sierra arrived, with her smile that never reached her eyes and a plan. But we'll get there. First, you need to see how someone becomes invisible right before they disappear completely. She made her entrance like she was stepping onto a TED Talk stage, not into a boardroom. Sierra Maddox, the new chief product officer, introduced herself with a ring light, a standing desk, and a color-coded vision board titled "The Future is Now." She wore lemon yellow heels, carried an iPad like a shield, and had a voice that made every word sound like a motivational poster. "Let's disrupt our comfort zones," she said on day one. No one knew what that meant, but half the team clapped anyway. I watched from the back row, behind my laptop, behind my silence. She didn't look at me. She looked through me, scanning the room like she was searching for a target, or worse, an audience. By week 2, the office walls were covered in pastel posters with phrases like, "Agile is a lifestyle," and "Fail fast, learn faster." Sierra hosted innovation huddles every Tuesday, where we were expected to pitch ideas over acai bowls and brainstorm while standing. She renamed our legacy modules old mindsets in a team meeting, then smiled as if calling someone's life's work obsolete was just clever branding. To be fair, Sierra was magnetic in the way that ring lights are bright, flawless, and slightly blinding. She knew how to talk. She knew how to sell. But when it came to how things actually functioned, you could see it in the way her fingers hovered over a terminal like she was afraid the keyboard might bite. Still, the higher-ups loved her. Jonas said she brought energy. Marketing called her a refresh. And HR sent out a company-wide survey titled, "Isn't she inspiring?" I never answered it. Because while everyone else applauded the Canva-colored revolution, I was still patching scripts that Sierra's efficiency team kept breaking. Then one day, she walked straight up to me holding a chart she clearly didn't understand and asked, "Do we really need all of this backend stuff?" I looked at her, I looked at the graph, and in that moment, I realized she wasn't here to understand anything. She was here to replace it. And I had just become her next inefficiency. The thing about being invisible for too long is that when people finally see you, it's often to tear you down. It happened during what Sierra called a culture realignment town hall. They served kombucha. There was a playlist. Someone brought a ring light for better vibe shots. Sierra stood under a giant projection of a Canva slide that read, "Make space for the new." She paced slowly, pausing just long enough to let her buzzwords echo like gospel. "We're building a team that embraces change," she said, smiling wide. "We can't let legacy thinking hold us back anymore." I felt it before I heard it, that tightening in my chest, the silence of people trying not to look at me. And then she said it. Sometimes the greatest obstacle to innovation is comfort. People who've been in the same role too long, doing things the same old way. Her eyes flicked toward me for a fraction of a second, just long enough, just sharp enough. I didn't flinch, but my hands curled slightly under the table, fingertips pressing into my palms. Dev, 2 rows away, looked straight at me. He didn't smile, didn't nod, just stared like he was bracing too. Someone laughed. I couldn't tell who. Then the room moved on. Just like that. No one said my name, but everyone heard it. The rest of the meeting blurred. There was a team scavenger hunt, some applause, a prize for best suggestion in the suggestion jar. I left early. Back at my desk, I opened a terminal and stared at lines of code that had quietly kept Covalon running for years. No posters, no applause, just solutions. And in that moment, I started to wonder, what happens when the only person who knows how to keep the lights on is told she's standing in the way of progress? Because that silence, it was starting to sound like warning. It came on a Thursday, 4:32 p.m. Subject line, quick sync, HR and leadership. No agenda, no context. Just a 15-minute block color-coded in gray. If you've ever worked in corporate long enough, you know what that kind of invite means. You don't need a meeting title. The time slot says it all. I stared at the screen for a while, didn't click accept, didn't decline, just sat there watching the blinking cursor like it might blink back. The office was unusually quiet that day. Sierra had flown out for a branding retreat in Napa. Jonas was in back-to-back investor calls. Only a few of us remained heads down, screens glowing, pretending the walls weren't tightening around us. Dev walked past my desk, slowed just enough to glance at my monitor. He saw the calendar block. Our eyes met. He gave me the smallest nod, the kind of nod that says, "I'm sorry." I walked into the conference room at exactly 4:30. Not early, not late, just ready. Inside, Julia from HR was already seated, lips tight, hands folded neatly over a folder I recognized too well. Jonas leaned against the window sleeves, rolled up like he wanted to look casual, like this wasn't what it clearly was. "Harper," he said with a half smile, I'd seen used in too many exit interviews. "Thanks for coming in." No small talk, no preamble. Julia slid the folder across the table. "We're restructuring a few legacy roles to align with Covalon's long-term agility goals," she began. Her voice had that over-rehearsed softness, like she was trying to wrap a razor in cotton. Jonas added, "This isn't about you. It's about the direction we're heading." Funny. The direction always seemed to point away from the people doing the actual work. I didn't cry, didn't argue. I just asked one question. Who's taking over the billing pipeline alerts? They both blinked. Julia flipped through her notes. Jonas shifted uncomfortably. Operations is evaluating options, he said. I nodded slowly, closed the folder, folded it into thirds like I was putting away something dead, and I stood up. I didn't slam anything, I didn't throw words, I just walked past desks I helped build, past dashboards I once debugged at midnight, past people who'd stopped looking me in the eye weeks ago. I stepped into the elevator alone. And as the doors closed, one thought echoed in my head. You don't always need to make noise to pull the plug. Sometimes all it takes is letting go. I didn't go home. After the meeting, I walked 2 blocks down to a little coffee shop called Marlowe's Quiet. Half-lit, the kind of place where nobody asks questions if you sit alone with a bitter drink and a storm in your chest. I ordered a black coffee. No sugar, no room for cream. Just heat and bitterness, the way the day had left me. The barista asked my name. I said Harper, but it came out like it didn't belong to me anymore. I sat in the far corner by the window. From there, I could still see the north side of Covalon's building, 15th floor, where the lights always stayed on too late, where my code kept the blood pumping long after everyone had logged out. And then I opened my laptop. Not to retaliate, not to sabotage, just to withdraw. One by one, I revoked my admin access, disabled the auto-patching routines I'd written over weekends and holidays, turned off the silent monitoring scripts that caught bugs before they surfaced. They weren't required by contract. They weren't even documented. They were mine. Quiet little lifelines I'd built to protect the very people who just showed me the door. I didn't delete anything, didn't break anything. I simply stepped back. And then I whispered to no one, 15 minutes. 15 minutes until the queue fills, until the caching cracks, until the systems start asking questions Sierra doesn't have answers for. I closed the lid, let the silence return. Outside, the wind shifted slightly, a cold breeze brushing the glass like the beginning of a storm. I didn't smile, I didn't smirk, just stared at the office windows and wondered, how long until they notice the hands that were holding them up are gone? The coffee had gone cold. Not that I noticed right away. I'd been staring out the window, letting the minutes pass without counting them, just breathing, just existing. Marlowe's was half empty. A couple whispering over a laptop, an old man reading the paper with trembling hands. Soft jazz playing from a speaker near the bar, crackling every so often, like it was struggling to hold the tune together. Fitting, I thought. Some things fall apart quietly. I sat with my laptop closed, phone face down, heart oddly calm. Not satisfied, not angry, just still. Then came the first vibration, a single buzz against the wood table. I turned the phone over. Slack notification. Hey Harper, weird Q, did you move the Q3 archive tool? It was from Marissa in finance. She used to leave candy on my desk before deadlines. Nice enough, but never once asked how anything worked. 10 minutes later, another buzz, then 2 more in quick succession. Reconciliation tool not syncing. Dev queue stalled. Anyone seeing timeout errors? My thumb hovered over the screen. I didn't reply. Emails started flooding in next. Subject lines like Sparks, urgent, processing delay, live API not responding, escalation needed ASA. I took a slow sip of coffee. Bitter, still drinkable, still better than everything I'd swallowed this past year. Across the street, the 15th floor remained lit, flickering now like something behind the glass was beginning to come undone. And still, no one called it what it was. Not yet. That's the thing about collapse. It doesn't start with sirens. It starts with silence. With confusion. With static. With people refreshing dashboards that refuse to load and blaming the Wi-Fi. I sat back in my chair. Let the hum build. Because the storm wasn't coming. It had already begun. They just didn't know where the thunder would land. Yet. It started with a flicker. One broken link. then a frozen login screen. Then the error messages began to multiply, quiet, relentless, like digital termites chewing through drywall. At first, they probably thought it was a network hiccup, a blip, a bad deploy, nothing a quick refresh couldn't fix. But then procurement's dashboard wouldn't load. Customer billing tools started throwing 500 server errors like confetti. The reconciliation tracker, the one Sierra called redundant last month, stopped syncing entirely. And just like that, Covalon's polished pastel-colored veneer began to crumble. I watched it unfold from the cafe window, sipping what was now little more than burnt water. Inside, I imagined chaos. Sierra furiously tapping her iPad, swiping like she could will graphs back to life. Jonas barking questions he didn't understand at people too junior to answer. Support teams spinning in circles, trying to reset systems they never built. Slack exploded. My phone buzzed so much it nearly skittered off the table. Hey Harper, weird question, but do you know where the vendor hook scripts are? Harper, please, are you seeing this? Can you just tell us what you did? I didn't touch a single one, because I hadn't done anything. I just stopped patching, stopped covering, stopped holding everything together for people who never asked how it worked, only why it wasn't shinier. The silence I'd left behind had turned into screaming. And still, not one person paused to ask the real question. Why was the system so fragile that one person stepping away could bring it down? I leaned back in my seat, listened to the distant hum of a company unraveling itself, and I wondered, how long could they keep pretending this was just a glitch before someone finally admitted the truth? It didn't take long for panic to turn into finger-pointing. By midday, Covalon's systems weren't just lagging, they were folding in on themselves. Clients were furious. Vendors stopped responding. Legal had already flagged a potential breach. So Jonas called an emergency meeting. Executives, department heads, tech leads all packed into the main conference room. I wasn't there, of course, but Dev was. And later, he told me everything. Sierra stood at the head of the table, her voice thin and trembling beneath the weight of forced confidence. "We're experiencing some temporary disruption," she said, scrolling through a sea of red error codes on a massive display. "I believe Harper may have changed something on her way out." The room shifted. Eyes darted, brows furrowed. Jonas raised an eyebrow. "She left 4 days ago." Sierra nodded too quickly. "Exactly. That's when it started, right? Her scripts. Maybe she sabotaged them." And that's when Dev spoke. He didn't raise his voice. He just pulled up the logs. Access logs. Audit trails. Modification timestamps. All of it clean. Harper hadn't changed anything. She hadn't deleted or corrupted or overwritten. She had simply removed herself, and the scripts stopped running because they were hers, unowned, undocumented, unprotected. "She didn't sabotage us," Dev said quietly. "She just stopped saving us." The room went still. Sierra's mouth opened like she was about to argue, but no sound came. The screen behind her glitched again. Another dashboard failed to load. Jonas looked down at his hands, then up. "She was essential," he muttered, "and we didn't even know it." Outside that room, in the quiet of Marlowe's cafe, I refreshed my feed. A headline popped up. "Covalon acknowledges infrastructure failure, promises full review." And beneath it, a comment from an old client. "Didn't Harper Linwood run that system?" I closed the tab. Didn't reply. Didn't need to. Because the truth, it was already written. Every line, every fix, every warning buried in the logs they never bothered to read. And something told me they were finally about to start reading. By the end of the week, the emails weren't urgent. They were desperate. Legal was in full damage control. Compliance teams unearthed expired API keys, third-party licenses that were never renewed, and an entire folder labeled vendor noise that Sierra had deleted without backup. Worse, someone found a Slack message she'd sent just 3 weeks earlier. "Harper's paranoid. No one cares about old contracts. Just delete the docs." They cared now. Clients were pulling out. Investors were asking questions no one had answers to. And the board? The board had gone quiet, which in corporate terms is the loudest kind of danger. By Friday morning, Sierra was gone. Not a dramatic exit, no goodbye post, no pastel announcement with hashtags about healing and growth. Just a line on the internal feed Sierra Maddox placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Jonas wasn't far behind. Word spread that he was being questioned by outside counsel, not about what he had done, but what he failed to see, failed to manage, failed to value. They asked why the only person who understood the infrastructure had been quietly let go, why her documentation had never been read, why no one thought to ask what happened if she left. And Jonas, for all his confident boardroom smiles, didn't have a single convincing answer. Meanwhile, I sat at home in a hoodie that didn't match, sipping tea instead of coffee. No dashboard, no pager, no midnight Slack, just peace. My inbox overflowing, but not with panic. Recruiters, CTOs, even ex-colleagues now pretending they'd always admired my work. Funny how silence turns into applause once the system breaks. Then came the envelope. No branding, no logo. Just my name handwritten. Inside an offer. Short-term consulting. Flexible hours. Senior role. Double the pay. And a single sentence scrolled in pen. We've always known you were the one holding it together. Ready when you are. I didn't answer. Not yet. Because before I moved on, there was still one call left to take. And it wasn't going to be about a job. It was going to be an apology. The call came on a Sunday. Not a weekday meeting, not an official request from legal, just a personal invite to a video call. No subject line, no preamble, just, "Can we talk, please?" It was from Sierra, the same Sierra who once told a room full of executives that I was resistant to change, the same Sierra who deleted compliance logs because they didn't match her vision. I didn't want to answer, but I did. Out of curiosity, maybe. Out of closure, probably not. Out of some small human part of me that wanted to hear it raw, not rehearsed. When her camera turned on, she looked different. Not polished, not powerful. She wore a hoodie with peeling glitter letters. Her hair was tied back like she hadn't planned to be seen today. Dark circles under her eyes. No filters, no ring light. "Harper," she said, voice thin like paper stretched too far. "I know I didn't respect what you did. I didn't even try to understand it." I said nothing. "I was wrong," she added. "I'm not asking you to fix it. If there's any way you can guide us, just enough to stabilize things." Her voice cracked. "I'll pay you myself." I waited, let the silence sit. Then I leaned forward, calm, deliberate. "You had your shot. You chose aesthetics over infrastructure, applause over substance, Canva over code." She blinked, stung. "I just didn't realize." "No," I cut in gently. "You didn't ask." Silence again, this time heavier. "I might be suspended," she whispered. "You already are," I said. "You just haven't been told yet." I clicked leave meeting. No drama, no threat, just a screen gone black and a weight lifted. Because sometimes the most powerful message isn't a grand speech. It's absence. It's the work you don't do. It's the help you choose not to give. And when people finally feel that void, they learn what you were worth all along. But as for me, I was just getting started. A few weeks later, I found myself back in motion. Not back to Covalin, that door had closed quietly and completely, but to something new, something lighter. The consulting offer I received, I took it. No titles, no politics, just a quiet room, respectful questions, and systems that actually needed care, not decoration. They didn't ask me to prove I was good, they asked what I wanted to fix first. Meanwhile, Covalin issued a formal apology to its clients. Jonas was reassigned to strategic oversight, whatever that means. Sierra never came back. Her farewell post read like a wellness retreat brochure, taking time to reflect and realign with my inner purpose. Grateful for the journey, sure. But what stuck with me wasn't how they left. It was how I did. No explosions, no grand revenge, just quiet, steady removal. And when the system stopped breathing, they finally asked, who kept it alive? It's funny. For years, I thought my value came from fixing things, being the failsafe, the silent patch. But sometimes the truest power isn't in what you repair. It's in knowing when to walk away and letting them feel the cracks they refuse to see. I'm not bitter, not anymore. I'm clear. And sometimes clarity feels better than justice ever could. Because when you stop saving the people who didn't even know you were saving them, they don't just notice you, they remember you. And maybe that's enough. What about you? Have you ever walked away from something and only then did they realize what you truly carried? Let me know in the comments. Someone out there might need to hear your story.